No time lapse for you this episode. It's not a treat I want to drive you into a weekly addiction for, so Alan at Dusk will do. But there will be news that Alan will indeed start going somewhere. I want to tie up the enigmatic story of the battery box lid. It's not small, and will have a purpose, as does everything on board, so naturally has a right to its own episode. The design was a simple, lightweight carbon diolen sandwich, primed on one side and foiled on the other. First, I need to protect the edges. This will avoid it being injured in any collision with a human shin or knee, and means I don't have to spend ages sanding the edge back to a flawless profile. I'm using metal cored, rubber-edged U-channel, the sort that some people use to protect the edge of their car doors, the automotive equivalent of placing a sleekly designed mobile phone into a giant plastic case. I feel I'm liberating at least some of this edging to another, higher purpose. Observant viewers will notice a deep moral imperative behind all Alan the Lifeboat episodes. We'll talk about the grey anti-slip later, so eyes on the bit I'm drilling into, please. I've masked over the new tough glossy black coating so I can draw on the shape I want to cut out, and then using a drill bit a little larger than my jigsaw blade for the corners. The masking tape also lessens the carnage as the jigsaw foot tries to scratch the surface as it slides across. Two excellent cutouts. Into them, two of the three components destined for the battery box lid. The first is the fused switchboard to control the battery balancing. See episode 41 for more of that. And the second, a simple on-demand voltmeter for each of the 4 batteries. When installing the fixing bolts, I'm following my normal order of play. Drilling one corner, popping the bolt in, and then the diagonal opposite corner, bolt in, and then the others. I'm not bothering with a template for one-off jobs, so I found this avoids the irritation of slightly misaligned drilling. On the underside are all the terminals, and yes, the bolts need to be swapped out for shorter ones when I have them. I may insulate a little around the terminal areas, as the foil tape is a conductor, but it shouldn't be an issue if all the connections are made properly. Here's the third component, the contentious battery balancer, the one that used to live in the charging shack. Why have I moved it? To avoid meters of unnecessary wiring, and because I need free space in the charge shack for a wind controller. I've installed it in the same way as before though, with cable ties, as the little mounting holes aren't confidence-inducing. It's on the underside for terminal access, but the rear face aligns with a hole in the lid, so heat can escape without hindrance. This is the underside assembly, and I needed to think through the wiring. It needs to be unpluggable in case I need to off the lid and move it a distance away. Plus, the wires can't be only a few inches long, as the lid will need to be slid off to the side on occasion without yanking things out of their homes. The fusing and switches are on the positive side of the balancing circuit, so I need a short link from the balancer to the switchboard. The balancer deals with up to 10 amps of current, so I've left each of the 4 fuses at 10 amps, in case only 2 batteries are balancing up. This might need changing in future, as there's no headroom here, and I might end up with slow failing fuses if they're operating right at their current rating for minutes on end. If I uprate the fuses too much, I could end up having an unacceptable current flowing, yet not blowing the fuses when they're actually needed to protect the circuit. Here's a quick experiment I tried with a final glob of epoxy putty I had laying around. I used silicone blobs on these plugs with my self-made Arctic gadgets, and although not pretty as it began to cure before I got around to smoothing, I want an equivalent for plugs aboard Alan. The putty gives me something to grab onto easily, and it physically separates the wires. If they got ripped out of the connector housing, they'd be very unlikely to touch and short out. Right, to finish off this section of the episode, to the battery box. Hold on, stop there. I want to give you an overview of what these Anderson connectors are for. The large yellows are for fast charging individual batteries from an AC diesel generator or the mains. The red ones are to connect up to the main electrics panel to run the boat's circuits. The grey ones are to link pairs of batteries together so we complete the 2 banks of 24-volt circuits, but can separate them in an instant. I noticed the screw terminals were going to end up a little crowded, and it's a hassle to keep screwing and unscrewing the bolts to release or add ring terminals. Plus, the system, or at least the bank, has to be switched off when doing that. My solution is to bond a pair of Wago distributors to each battery, and yes, proper branded ones, to avoid a repeat of the grumpiness we were treated to on the last video comment section, where ironically, some people were gleefully adding 2 and 2 to get a truly apoplectic 10. I'll use them for low current circuits, things like slow charging, voltmeters and so on. What's missing, aside from finishing off the ends of the stranded wires? A plastic insulator guard between them to keep the poles apart. We have a battery lid. I'm considering a clear protective polycarbonate lid to go over the electrical components, but we'll see. I'll tackle the grey anti-slip now. I suspect that has haunted your every thought since the first glimpse 1 minute into the episode. But here we can enhance both form and function. With non-slip rubber, I can place things on the box when Alan isn't in motion. I got carried away, and did the engine cowling lids too. These weren't a particularly different build to the battery box lid, although a little thicker and with higher carbon content so they can take a person's weight, but they won't shatter if heavily impacted. They're pitted due to the fabric weave showing through, and I didn't use a gel coat as I wanted to save weight and knew they'd eventually be covered. Gel coat, what gives you a smooth surface, is just a layer of plastic resin, so I avoid it if I can. Anyhow, pit's hidden, and Alan's engine cowling, which doubles up as a work surface during all this refitting, looks much smarter. We'll see how it wears, but if I ended up scraping it too badly, it's quick to rip up and replace. The rest of Alan hasn't escaped the same treatment either, so I've tested a piece on the entranceway area of the starboard side hatch. The original textured fiberglass moulding was something we found lost its grip when wet on sea trials, and so this will help. I could use a more aggressive aggregate set into a resin coating like the top deck anti-slip, but that's tough to wipe clean. With all this intricate precision work, I had the sudden urge to do some more gardening. It was only a few weeks ago I cut all this back. Here's a tree stump. The practical work set aside, we can now barrel into some more exhilarating theory, namely where Alan's going to go. I've included some hints and catch-ups in early episodes, explaining why I bought Alan in the first place, and why he didn't end up in the Arctic in 2020. Obviously, a boat has a purpose and needs to earn his keep one day. The winter season is when I want to be active on the high Arctic sea ice, on foot or on skis. Alan's purpose is to get me, and a small team, to the right place at the right time, and be our safety and shelter whilst we prepare and do some survey work. Of course, when the sea ice extent is at its maximum, the springtime, is when Alan can't get around so easily. With a fiberglass hull and a 48 horsepower engine, he has no ice-breaking ability whatsoever, although could push through some very loosely packed ice at a slow speed. The hull shape and the levers and winches I'll carry on an expedition means he's vanishingly unlikely to be crushed by ice, however. This means Alan can handle winter and spring drifting, but can only really travel under power in the summer and early autumn. The 2020 plan before the border closures was to work from the northern Canadian and Alaskan coast before approaching the ice pack. We had budget and a specific survey transect we wanted to access. I now have more of a blank canvas, but emptier pockets. You'll probably notice that one particular country, the less said about the better in this context, encircles a vast proportion of the Arctic Ocean, and in particular is adjacent to the area the important transpolar drift current draws its water and ice from. Until things change dramatically, it's unwise to the extreme to attempt passage through or near Russian waters, or to place yourself within their designated search and rescue tranche. Should anything go wrong for a small boat north of their territory, international agreements require that they should assist, but I think that we can assume for now that this would not happen. A British skier in Siberia was recently arrested, detained for some time, and then deported. My aim in the meantime is then to move Alan to a forward base in anticipation of better times. I have a few major external works to complete this summer and autumn, with the spring for any catch-up jobs, and then Alan will head up the British coast as a sort of trial run to shake out any issues, and then take the most direct route across to Norway. From there, moving up the coast towards its Arctic northern coast. I then need to move Alan during a multi-day passage north to the High Arctic island of Svalbard, where he'll be based until ready to use on a project. I can do more work in situ, but the temperatures there, even in the summer, mean that Alan's outside work needs to be roundly complete. Tinkering inside will continue, and indeed never end, of course. Those 2 offshore passages will be no small tasks, and although we can carefully await good weather windows, my preference would be to travel in a mini convoy with 1 or 2 equally slow vessels, and I'm putting out the feelers at the moment to make that happen. In the meantime, just the easy stuff. Major hull work on Alan, sorting out the Arctic project funding and team, and finding the clear weeks next year for Alan's grand tour, taking in the beautiful sights of Bamborough, the Lofoten Islands, and Skegness, somewhere Alan has long hassled me about visiting. Well, there's the rough outline for you. I'm not kidding myself that it'll halt the comment section inquiries about when or where Alan's going to go, but where would the fun be if it were just a forum for careful, efficient, and considered discourse?
No reason this can't be fun, you know.
Bye.